Beneath the concrete, asphalt, and manicure lawns of every modern American city is a shadow infrastructure, a labyrinth network of high-pressure pipes and subterranean rivers. This grid is designed to carry away the waste of human civilization. It's a hostile environment of noxious gases, industrial heavy metals, and a continuous grinding motion. The public works employees down there are used to finding the bizarre. Municipal wastewater grids produce bizarre things, from discarded weapons to narcotics. But on extremely rare occasions, they find things that defy all logical explanation. Something so deeply unsettling that it stops the public works in its tracks. Sanitation workers found something bizarre floating in the toxic churn. It wasn't industrial waste. It was exactly half of an adult human brain. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend, Kenny. Today, we are opening the file on the Northampton County Doe, an unprecedented nightmare where investigators had to trace biological tissue backwards through hundreds of miles of sewers. Let's get spooky. The date was Friday, January 7th, 2000. The location was the Bethlehem Wastewater Treatment Plant, a massive industrial complex on Shimersville Road in Pennsylvania. The plant is the filtration point, the final filtration point for the city's liquid waste, processing millions of gallons of sewage and storm runoff before it can be neutralized and released. At approximately 11:18 p.m., the facility was running under the quiet, mechanized hum of the night shift. An employee named Scott Bachman was tasked with the standard unglamorous duty, cleaning out the catch basin. If you aren't familiar with wastewater treatment engineering, and why would you be? A catch basin, it's heavily iron gates designed to trap large, heavy solids and debris before the water heads to the delicate chemical filtration stages. It's a highly contaminated area where garbage and sludge accumulates rapidly. While he was clearing the basin of this disgusting refuse, Bachman noticed something strange floating among the debris. He would describe it as pink, fleshy material. Now, here's where the case hinges on an extraordinary coincidence. In almost any other circumstance, a municipal sanitation worker might have simply dismissed that pink mass as discarded animal tissue. It's common for butchers to throw animal waste or for there to be commercial grease trap overflow to find its way into the storm drain system. The object would likely have been scooped up, thrown into an incinerator, and completely forgotten, erasing the evidence forever. But Scott Bachman was not just a sanitation worker. Prior to working at the wastewater treatment plant, he had worked at the local coroner's office. Bachman had a trained eye for human anatomy. Looking closely under the industrial lights of the treatment plant, he saw the unmistakable folds and ridges that are unique to the human brain. Bachman immediately suspected that he was looking at human brain matter. The Bethlehem Police Department was notified, and the standard overnight operations of the Shimersville Road plant were transformed into an active, restricted crime scene. When law enforcement and medical professionals arrived, preliminary examinations confirmed Bachman's suspicions. The object pulled from the sludge was, in fact, half of an adult human brain. There would be a forensic investigation afterward, but it ruled out most explanations. There was no chemical preservation. The brain matter showed absolutely no signs of chemical preservation. There was no trace of formalin or formaldehyde or other fixtures that are used in labs or mortuaries. It was raw, organic, unpreserved tissue. There were no obvious surgical tool marks, no clean incisions, scalpel cuts, or bone saw marks that would indicate the professional autopsy or some sort of dissection. Forensic experts were able to determine it had been recently disposed, so it was not in a deep state of decomposition. The human brain is composed of 60% fat and has an incredibly high water content. Outside the skull, it is incredibly fragile and is one of the first organs to undergo rapid self-digestion or putrefaction after death. And the fact that the tissue maintained its structural integrity indicated that it had not been in the turbulent water for very long. A theory quickly formed. An unknown individual somehow acquired or removed half of a human brain and flushed it down a toilet, sending it straight into the Shimersville Road catch basin. This made the authority fall to the Northampton County Coroner, Zachary Lysick. The mandate that was given to his office and local law enforcement was to identify the victim, determine the cause of death, and locate the rest of the remains. Investigators had to rely on DNA extraction and geographic tracing. And here is why this case is a forensic paradox. and why you need to understand the science of the sewer. If you think modern forensics can solve anything, this case shows that a city's infrastructure can perform the erasure of an identity. In the year 2000, forensic DNA analysis was highly advanced, but it still relied heavily on the structural and chemical integrity of whatever the sample was. The half brain was transported to the Pennsylvania State Police Forensics Laboratory in Bethlehem to extract a clear DNA profile to cross-reference against the missing persons databases. But sewer environments are incredibly hostile to DNA. Municipal wastewater contains exceptionally high concentrations of toxic elements. The tissue would have been exposed to heavy metals like cadmium, chromium, copper, lead, mercury, nickel, silver, and zinc. Synthetic organic chemicals like chlorinated aromatic hydrocarbons, PCBs, and pesticides. And the sewer is teeming with aggressive bacteria that degrade human cellular structures upon contact. On March 3rd, 2000, exactly 8 weeks after the discovery, the Morning Call newspaper published an update. The headline read, "Probe doesn't indicate who owns the brain. DNA tests inconclusive on matter found in Bethlehem sewer plant." Coroner Lysick went on record stating his office was unable to determine the identity because of intense contamination the half-brain sustained while in the sewer system. The chemical degradation inflicted by the toxic water was so absolute that forensic scientists could not isolate a viable, readable genetic sequence. Without DNA, dental records, fingerprints, or skeletal markers to determine age or sex, the biological tissue was reduced to an anonymous lump of cellular material. Well, if they couldn't get DNA, what about tracking the pipe backwards? They hoped to track the specific pipeline that fed into the catch basin to narrow down the potential neighborhood or area. And this was also a logistical impossibility. A municipal sewer grid is a sprawling web of thousands of miles of pipes. City sewer lines operate on a branching system. Thousands of smaller pipes feed into larger trunk lines. And once an object enters a main trunk line leading to a central plant, its origin point becomes impossible to isolate among tens of thousands of potential source drains. Solid objects move through sewers at unpredictable rates depending on water volume, blockages, and the size of the pipes. Without knowing the exact time it was flushed, investigators couldn't calculate the distance it traveled. Coroner Lysick conceded to the press that authorities were completely unable to determine where the brain came from. Since there was no concrete DNA evidence, or an identifiable origin point, or a matchless body that was missing a brain turning up somewhere in the Pennsylvania wilderness, we have to rely entirely on guesswork. How does an adult human brain exit the skull, avoid professional preservation, it's a key part here, and end up floating in a wastewater treatment plant? There are 4 theories. Let's talk about it. The first theory is the discarded medical specimen. The initial, probably most comforting theory was that the brain was simply discarded medical or educational waste. Hospitals, medical schools, and mortuaries routinely handle extracted human organs. But the forensic reality undermines this. The brain had no obvious incisions or signs of chemical preservation, which authorities stated made it very unlikely that it came from a hospital or research facility. Medical specimens intended for anatomical study are preserved. A brain utilized for education is soaked in formaldehyde or formalin. An unpreserved brain left at room temperature degrades into an amorphous semi-liquid state within days. Pathologists use striker saws to cut through the cranium and section the brain methodically with clean scalpel incisions. The Bethlehem brain was a raw, unpreserved half, lacking any clean, precise markers. The second theory is what you've probably been guessing. The brain is the direct byproduct of a brutal homicide or dismemberment. Dismemberment in crime is almost exclusively a countermeasurement to obscure the victim's identity and easily dispose of the remains. But extracting a human brain requires a large amount of physical force and leverage to breach the skull. If this was a murder, the killer used extreme mechanical force. There is some precedent to this. Between 2012 and 2013 in the Metro Detroit area, public works employees discovered 10 to 15 softball-sized pieces of human flesh floating in the massive Macomb sewer grid. I did a video about this previously that you should go watch when you're done watching this video. That case proved that killers could use the sewer grid as a disposal place. However, in Detroit, the pieces contain skin and fat, which are highly buoyant and tough enough to survive the water. And they were able to extract DNA and identify 3 missing biological females. The Bethlehem brain tissue was too fragile. If it was a murder, the question remains, where is the other half? Where is the skull? Where is the body? A third theory is a catastrophic traumatic accident. This is a plausible theory that suggests that the brain matter entered the street-level sewer drain following a catastrophic accident. Many older municipalities used combined sewer systems. This means that stormwater from the asphalt flows directly into wastewater treatment facilities alongside domestic sanitary sewage. Could a high-speed motorcycle crash or catastrophic industrial incident have resulted in a massive explosive head trauma, partially ejecting the brain directly onto the street? If it rained, or if emergency responders washed down the bloody scene unaware of the missing tissue, it could have washed straight into a storm grate and down to the Shimerville Road. But the flaw here is the absence of an incident. A trauma severe enough to bisect a skull and eject half a brain onto the asphalt will leave behind a highly visible, gruesome accident scene, massive amounts of blood, and a body missing half of its cranial contents. And no such accident and no corresponding brainless body was reported to Bethlehem authorities or local hospitals in the days leading up to January 7th, 2000. A fourth theory is the ritualistic or fringe activity in the darker corners of crime, maybe involving the occult or ritualistic activity. Investigators have explored theories related to dark occult practices where human heads are utilized in rituals. The bizarre nature of extracting exactly half a brain without clinical tools aligns with the chaotic mutilation sometimes seen in extreme ritualistic crimes. However, without any other evidence, this is just a fringe hypothesis. More than 2 decades later, this case remains officially unsolved. The intense chemical contamination of the urban sewer system successfully created the perfect erasure of this person's identity. While the official police file is cold, the mystery is found in Afterlife. It is a legendary internet mystery, regularly debated on Reddit communities like Unresolved Mysteries and Grateful Does. Researchers and podcasters have highlighted the case as the pinnacle of unresolved anatomical mysteries. Thousands of armchair detectives continue to attempt to piece together a puzzle that completely defeated forensic science. The mystery of the Bethlehem sewer brain continues because it is a mystery that forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Somewhere on or shortly before January 7th, an individual was killed. Their life, their memories, their consciousness, their physical form were systematically dismantled. Half of their mind washed through the toxic darkness of a Pennsylvania steel town, enduring heavy metals and industrial chemicals only to be caught by a cold metal grate in the dead of night. The final resolution isn't a resolution. It forces us to acknowledge that a human brain can simply vanish into the shallow grid beneath our feet, leaving behind only an anonymous fragment of our consciousness. The other half of the brain, the skull, the body, and the name of the victim remain untraceable, unrecognizable, and forever unresolved. Please subscribe to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Please make sure that you like and share this video. You can support this channel by becoming a member of the channel, and I appreciate you considering this. You can also support my channel by watching, liking, sharing, hyping, and commenting on my videos. And I do appreciate you watching my videos. And please stay spooky.